Okay, good morning, you all. I'm in a mood today. I'm just warning everybody about this before we even get started that, there are some days where I come on here and I'm a bit ranty. Today is likely to be that day. So have your volume buttons handy if you are not in the mood. All right. It's ECM. This is Resistance Live for April 1st, 2024. And as always, I'm coming to you from occupied Tongva territory here in Southern California, where finally the rain has abated. Today, for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a black and cream striped blouse. My thin gold hoops are in. I am a dirty blonde-haired, green-eyed, pink-skinned woman, and I'm sitting in my office in front of a very tall green plant and a standing lamp and my big cushy chair, and my pronouns are she, her. Okay, welcome back. If you were here yesterday for Progressive Coffee Hour for our Patreon-only subscribers, you're going to know some of the things that I'm going to talk about already today, but I will just tell you that this morning I have reached an absolute breaking point about not just the absolute abject bashing of the DOJ, but all the disinformation that is attached to it, because there are a lot, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. All right. So let me just say this as a preliminary matter. All right. I know that what is happening in this country is really uncomfortable. And I know that seeing the former president, after 7+ years of ongoing trauma and narcissistic abuse from this man, and then seeing him do things like threaten the daughter of a judge and threaten the president of the United States is deeply uncomfortable. Like, I'm with all of you on this. I understand exactly how hard it is to live through. All right. And one of the things that I think is happening with a lot of folks right now is that the discomfort has reached such a level that there is that people are looking for people to blame, right? They're like, somebody has to do something, right? Like what I saw this morning on Threads when I was talking about this was people going like, why isn't Merrick Garland doing something, right? And that to me is a sign of not being able, for very justifiable reasons, to sit in the discomfort of where we are. All right. And one of the things that I need people to kind of think through here is, like democracy. So I have a couple of things I need to say about this, but we've got to start from the very beginning here, okay? Because one of the things that I'm seeing seeded everywhere is this, like, the DOJ did nothing for 2 years, or why didn't Merrick Garland appoint a special counsel as soon as he was sworn in as the attorney general? Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning here, okay? The day of January 6th was the day that the DOJ began investigating what happened during the insurrection. Like, the investigation literally began that day. Evidence collection, okay? Merrick Garland wasn't yet the attorney general on January 6th, right? President Trump was still in office. On January 20th, when Joe Biden was sworn in as the president of the United States, the nomination of Merrick Garland as the AG went to the Senate. I bet some of you have forgotten what happened next, which is that Senate Republicans delayed the confirmation hearings of Merrick Garland until March. And that meant that Merrick Garland did not become the Attorney General of the United States until March of 2021. Nonetheless, the FBI and Joe Biden's version of the DOJ started investigating what happened on January 6th right away. Now, for those of you who don't know this, the investigation into January 6th is the largest criminal investigation that has ever been undertaken by the DOJ and the FBI. More resources have been dedicated to the investigation of the events of that day than to any other criminal investigation in history. Okay? So the idea that Merrick Garland was just sitting there twiddling his thumbs, which is what tons of people are saying all over Threads this weekend and today, is a lie. That's fraudulent information. It's false. Just flat out purely false. Okay. They did not do nothing. They were investigating exactly what happened. And do you know what the results of that were by the time we got to the 3rd anniversary of January 6th earlier this year? 1,400 people had been indicted. 700 plus guilty pleas had been obtained. More than 450 people are doing hard time for the events around January 6th. Okay. This is not nothing. Now, there are lots of people this morning who are like, why hasn't the DOJ done more? Has everyone completely forgotten that Donald Trump has been indicted for events related to January 6th in the District Court for the District of Columbia? That's the case that's currently in front of Judge Chutkan. He's actually been indicted. Like, he's being criminally prosecuted for events related to trying to overthrow the election. Do people not grasp this? That case is actually pending. That's the case that is like currently on appeal on presidential immunity to the Supreme Court. Now, for everybody who is looking back and going like, why wasn't Jack Smith appointed sooner? That's the other thing that I was like getting this morning. All right. Like, why wasn't he appointed sooner? Okay. So I went because, like I always like to back check myself because sometimes my memory isn't totally 100%. I went back and looked at the appointment announcement about Jack Smith because my recollection about the special counsel statute and what triggered it actually turned out to be correct. Jack Smith was appointed within days of when Donald Trump announced that he was going to be a candidate for the presidency in 2024. Why did that trigger the special counsel statute? I'll tell you why. Because the DOJ has an obligation to be independent. Okay? The Attorney General and the Department of Justice are not political arms of government. They are not there to do the bidding of the President of the United States. And there are all sorts of back checks built into this process. One of them is the special counsel statute, which says that if there is a potentially political prosecution in play, it's appropriate to appoint a special counsel. So Merrick Garland, in his announcement of why he was appointing Jack Smith when he did it, explicitly states that it was the announcement of Donald Trump making himself a candidate for the presidency in 2024 that triggered the appointment of the special counsel so that the independence of the DOJ could be preserved. Okay. Now, what does this mean next? Here's what it means. And this is really important for everybody who's like, why isn't Merrick Garland doing something? Okay. Here's why it matters so much. Because Jack Smith is not under the supervision of Merrick Garland as an appointed special counsel. Merrick Garland has no control any longer over the prosecution of Donald Trump because the special counsel is in charge of all of it. All right. So if you want somebody to do something about Donald Trump violating his bail conditions or violating the gag order, the people you should be looking to are the people who are prosecuting him. And that is Jack Smith, Fani Willis, and Alvin Bragg. I'm going to remind everybody, these threats that Donald Trump has made have only taken place, these ones that arguably violate the gag order. And I'm going to answer a question about that in a minute because we've already talked about Alvin Bragg, but I'm going to repeat myself. These particular statements by Donald Trump have literally taken place in the last 72 hours. All right. The threat against Joe Biden, the photograph of him hogtied with a bullet through his head that was on the back of a pickup truck. That happened Friday. Okay. The threats against the judge's daughter were Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and this weekend. Here's what I want everybody to understand, okay? This is not, and I said this yesterday on the broadcast, and I really want people to just like grasp this. I'm just going to say one other thing. I'm going to ask everybody in the comments, if you are tempted, because I'm seeing this right now, to bash Merrick Garland while I'm talking about exactly how the DOJ works, to just like put a pause on your keyboard warriorism this morning until you actually understand what's going on. Okay, because one of the things I have to make clear here in like among all of this is that there are very strong indications that the DOJ bashing that is going on is seeded disinformation. If people actually understood that Merrick Garland, by the appointment of Jack Smith, has taken the purview of prosecution of Donald Trump out from under his authority and handed it over to Jack Smith, meaning the DOJ has no authority over this any longer, people would stop. You should stop. Okay. And I'm going to tell you why. Let me tell you why. And then we're going to go back to the whole thing about the gag order. All right. Here's why. Disinformation has several purposes as its aim. Okay. And I'm not talking about misinformation where people are just repeating false things that they don't understand. I'm talking about actual disinformation campaigns that are designed to have a particular effect. For instance, the DOJ is to blame for Donald Trump still walking around. That's false. Okay. Flat out false under the facts that we have right now. Okay. The DOJ no longer has any authority over prosecuting Donald Trump. Do people understand that? Do I need to repeat myself? The special counsel has been appointed to preserve the independence of the DOJ. They have no authority over his prosecution for January 6th. Period. Okay. The point of disinformation, whether it is national disinformation, domestic disinformation, or foreign bad actors seeding disinformation into social media that is then picked up by people who aren't thinking. And unfortunately, there's a lot of lawyers making commentary right now who are not thinking this through. They're not thinking about the impact of their words, all right? The point of disinformation campaigns, particularly disinformation campaigns that start from foreign bad actors, but also those that are like being run by white nationalists inside the United States right now, is to seed distrust in democratic institutions. Why? Well, there's two primary reasons. The first is that if you seed distrust in democratic institutions, that means that your average voter thinks that there's no difference, no matter who they elect. If it doesn't matter, if the system's corrupt, if you can't trust anybody, if the DOJ isn't doing its job, if the Attorney General is falling down on the job, none of this works, Trump's never going to be held accountable, the justice system has failed us. Do you think that motivates people to get out of their house on election day? Do you think that empowers people to talk to their neighbors about why they should fight for democracy? I'm going to tell you the answer to that, full stop, is no. It actually has the opposite effect. It makes people who are disaffected and disenchanted believe that there's no point to getting involved or to voting. Now, we have a right under the First Amendment of the Constitution in this United States to protest and to petition our government, okay? And if you have concerns about how the DOJ is functioning under Merrick Garland, with the understanding that I've just given you, all right, let's just say hypothetically you don't understand that the role of the Attorney General is essentially to be the managing partner of the world's largest law firm. Let's just like assume that you understand that like Merrick Garland doesn't actually try any cases, right? Let's assume that you've been watching this broadcast for a while and you grasp the totality of how the DOJ works and what has happened with the appointment of the special counsel. Let's just say hypothetically you're still disappointed in Merrick Garland. What's your recourse? Here's your recourse. Get involved in democracy and go vote. Okay, petition your leaders to make reforms to our judicial system to make it more equitable and fair. Okay, ask for loopholes to be closed that have been exploited by the former guy. Okay, you know, people are doing this, by the way. Representative Sherrill in New Jersey is putting a bill on the floor of the House right now to stop Donald Trump from getting security clearance briefings. You know, that's what elected officials can do. But the thing that doesn't help anybody is randomly screaming, why doesn't anybody do something? The DOJ is failing us. When you don't actually understand what the DOJ is doing, what Merrick Garland's current authority is, and how it's working, right? Okay, that's the first thing. So it's voter suppression. I want everybody to understand this. When you are bashing the DOJ with no understanding of how it works, with no understanding of the fact that Merrick Garland does not have authority to prosecute Donald Trump for January 6th right now, you are engaging in voter suppression. Full stop. Full stop. Okay? Like, I can't make it any clearer than that. But the second thing that disinformation campaigns that are being seeded around this do is they create an opening for fascism. Why? Well, let's just think about this. The DOJ isn't working. Merrick Garland is a tool. Nobody's doing what they're supposed to do. Democracy is like, it doesn't matter. None of this works. Crime is running rampant. You see how quick that jump is? We need a law and order president. We need somebody who's really going to like drop the hammer on all these criminals who are running around America and these like quote unquote illegal immigrants who are coming over the border because the DOJ isn't doing its job. See how close that is? See how close that leap is? Because when you undermine democratic institutions, you undermine democracy. And then people start to get the idea that maybe what they really need is a strongman. Maybe what they really need is a dictator. I don't really have a problem with Trump being a dictator on day one, as long as he shuts down those shoplifting rings that are stealing from Victoria's Secret. Right? So, you know, people really need to understand the totality of the picture of what is happening with this kind of commentary, all right? And they also need to understand the facts. Now, Donald Trump is being prosecuted for 91 felony indictments in 4 different jurisdictions. So let's talk about the gag orders that are related to this right now and his bond release conditions, all right? Because this is where you can actually start to like understand what's happening, all right? The gag order, we talked about this on 4 separate broadcasts last week. The gag order in Alvin Bragg's case has a problem. As it was drafted by Juan Merchan, there's a little bit of a vagary in whether or not it covers the judge and the judge's family. This is the reason why last Thursday afternoon, Alvin Bragg wrote a letter to the judge, which is now in the public domain, asking for the gag order to be clarified and to make it very clear to Donald Trump and his attorneys that if he continues down this path, he's looking at jail. Criminal contempt, 30 days in the clink. Donald Trump's attorneys wrote a response to that letter on Friday that said, we think he has a free speech right to attack the judge's daughter, period. That's false. What we're waiting on now, and what will probably happen today, is that we're going to get some form of a clarifying order from Judge Merchan that says this is the clear line that cannot be crossed by Donald Trump if he wants to avoid being held in criminal contempt. Okay? But there's a legal issue here. And this is one other thing that I want people to understand, okay? We have due process rights in this country. We have due process rights for every single person who is accused of a crime. And if, the people who are feeling very, very uncomfortable are like, lock him up. Why hasn't he been arrested? Why hasn't he been arrested for this? The thing you have to understand right now, okay, is that the gag order, as it is written on its face, raises questions about whether or not attacking the judge's daughter on social media is a violation of the gag order. The gag order says you can't attack staff of the courtroom, the courthouse. You can't attack their family members. Is the judge staff? Unclear. And that's the reason why Alvin Bragg did exactly the right thing. He wrote to the judge and said, tell us what this means. Clarify your order. Advise Donald Trump that if he violates this order by bashing your child on social media and putting a target on her back, that will land him in jail. Tell him that. Okay. And that's because Donald Trump has due process rights. Now, there are a lot of people here who would prefer that that's not what was happening because they're so uncomfortable with the fact that Donald Trump is walking around free. And believe me, it's really uncomfortable. He's put a target on the back of lots of people. I myself have personally been doxxed and cyber harassed to the point of needing to go to the police because of some of his followers. All right. I get it very intimately. And at the same time, when we eliminate due process rights for one person, we eliminate them for everyone. And this is the reason why when you're in law school, one of the things that they teach you right away, and I've said this over and over again here, is that hard cases make bad law. Okay? The fact that we are all profoundly uncomfortable with the fact that a former president is threatening the current president and the judge's daughter is not a reason to abrogate the due process rights of the Constitution. It's not. And I'm sorry if people don't like that. But you eliminate due process, you're one step away from locking up your political opponent and throwing away the key. That's not how our democracy works. That's not how our democracy works. That's not how any democracy works. So what has to happen now, okay, is that the judge has to rule that the gag order covers the conduct in which Donald Trump is engaged. And it will be forward-looking. Because he's arguably not on notice, and this is a due process right, that his claims against the judge's daughter violate the gag order, because the gag order has this really weird little vagary to it. If he does it again, after Judge Merchan clarifies the gag order, he'll be held in criminal contempt, which can be a fine, but it could also be 30 days in the clink. Okay. Now, as for the allegations against Joe Biden, I want everybody to understand how this works, because the way that this works ordinarily, if you post something like that on social media and you're your average everyday Joe citizen person, is that the police don't show up at your door and arrest you. Okay. And I know the thing that's really crazy to me about this is that as somebody who's been a licensed attorney now since 1997, okay, count the number of years. One of the things that is really clear here is that our judicial system is not equitable. Like, I'm not going to sit here and argue with all of you that rich white men don't have certain privileges in our judicial system that young black men do not. Okay. Like, our judicial system is founded on white supremacy, and there's lots of problems with it. And those problems can be rectified through elections. All right. But one of the things that I want people to understand is that even in circumstances like this, because I know people that this has happened to, if you make a social media post that is arguably considered to be a potential threat against the current sitting president, you get a visit from the Secret Service and they interview you. They talk to you about what your intent was in posting that. Maybe maybe you retain a lawyer and the lawyer negotiates with them and they consider bringing charges. They may elevate it to the FBI or the DOJ. The DOJ decides whether or not to seat a grand jury to indict you. That's how due process works. Okay. Now, if Donald Trump walked into the White House with an Uzi and started shooting it, of course he would be arrested immediately. But posting something on social media does not work like that. That's not how it works, okay? Because there is an intent requirement to every single crime. We've talked about this on the broadcast previously. Let me get this person. Bye. Where are you? Bye. See you later. Bye, troll. So one of the things that, we have to deal with here is that there is a due process requirement for anybody. We do not randomly lock people up unless they are posing an immediate threat. The way that people get arrested on the spot is that they are committing a crime that is being witnessed by the police, where there's no question that there's a personal safety issue. Okay. So you look at this, and if you were every other average citizen, you would be expecting a knock on your door from the Secret Service. You would be interviewed. They would decide whether or not to elevate it. The DOJ would decide whether or not to prosecute it. A grand jury would be seated. Then you'd be indicted, and then you'd be brought before a judge. So, again, I just truly need people to understand that we do not live in a system where Trump randomly posting something on social media should get him arrested. I'm really glad we don't, by the way. Because I posted a lot of things during the Trump administration, as did many of you, that were very virulently against the president at the time. And I'm really glad, I never threatened anybody, but I'm really glad that we don't live in a country where you can get arrested for the things you post on social media, immediately. Imagine what would happen if that was the case. So we're waiting now on the prosecutors in charge, that is Jack Smith, Fani Willis, and Alvin Bragg, to bring the issue of Donald Trump's bail release conditions and or his violations of the gag orders in front of their respective judges. And that is the way that this will be dealt with. Now, does everybody remember where we started this broadcast? Everybody remember where we started, right? We started off all the way back at Merrick Garland. Does everybody understand to where we have gotten to now in the last 22 minutes, how it is that Merrick Garland has nothing to do with this? I hope everybody does. I really hope everybody does. Oh, we got another troll. Bye. Bye. See you later. I want everybody to really, truly understand, truly understand that the totality of where we find ourselves in this very uncomfortable moment has procedures that are being followed to address Donald Trump's behavior. All right. And for that reason, I am personally really disturbed by the ongoing, the DOJ sucks, they're not doing their job, Merrick Garland is the worst appointment ever, I don't even understand why Joe Biden doesn't fire him. Let me just raise one other thing for those of you who are saying all that stuff or have seen it. Okay, I want you to imagine what would happen if Joe Biden fired Merrick Garland right now. What do you think that would mean for the 2024 election? What kind of talking points do you think that would seed with the far right and with Donald Trump's campaign? Because I can tell you what it would do. Okay. Here's what would happen. There would be Joe Biden fired Merrick Garland because he needs an attorney general who's going to prosecute his enemies. Joe Biden fired Merrick Garland because the left was screaming about how Merrick Garland wasn't doing enough to put Donald Trump in prison. It would be a political termination. And the DOJ, let me repeat it, is not a political arm of government. It would be a campaign decision. Okay, does everybody grasp this? I really want people to understand it. Bye. All these people are coming back. I think this is probably the same person. They're resubscribing so they can show up and troll. Just don't worry about it, people. It's random. We just don't need to worry about it. So let me just wind this up because we have other really important things to talk about today, but this stuff really matters. Okay. If you are angry about the time that this is taking, there's one other thing I wanted to remind everybody of. Please remember that Jack Smith's investigation is ongoing. There were people ranting at me this morning on Threads about why hasn't he indicted members of Congress? Okay. I got to remind everybody, it took 10 years to prosecute Watergate, which was a much lesser set of crimes than what we are dealing with on January 6th. Plus, Jack Smith clearly made a prosecutorial decision to streamline a lone case against Donald Trump for the insurrection in the hopes of getting it tried before the November election. He could have indicted plenty of other people, right? Like including all the people who have already been indicted in Fulton County. But he opted not to do that, which is his right. Because it's a much cleaner case if it's just against Donald Trump. You don't have all these multitude of defendants filing motions all the time, right? He did it on purpose. And so, like, please understand the story isn't over. It's not done. Like, not even close. I mean, Arizona today is seating a grand jury to investigate the Arizona fraudulent elector slate. In fact, that grand jury is already seated, and we learned yesterday that the Arizona fraudulent electors took the 5th. So, like, people really need to understand that, you know, like it doesn't work the way that you were led to believe it works on Law and Order. It doesn't work the way that you were led to believe it worked on Perry Mason. That's entertainment. And our judicial system is not here for your entertainment or, for that matter, to assuage your discomfort with a rising fascist leader. That's not what it's here to do. It's here to uphold the laws of the United States consistent with the terms of the Constitution, free of favor. Okay, so it is really critically important. Bye again. Bye. It's really key for people to understand that if you are uncomfortable, and who isn't at this moment in time? Like, this is the other thing. Like, of course we're uncomfortable, right? Your discomfort is legitimate. But if you're looking for a place to put that energy, instead of bashing Merrick Garland and the DOJ, you should get involved in mobilizing for the 2024 election where you live. Because action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to anxiety. Action is the antidote to your discomfort, I promise you. So get involved. Like, volunteer for your local Democratic Party. Volunteer for the Biden campaign. Volunteer, even better yet, for local candidates who really matter to you. And get that reverse coattails effect of, like, I'm voting for a Democrat for school board who believes in truthful American history and that trans kids have rights and that book banning is fascist. I'm going to vote for that candidate. I'm going to get all my neighbors to vote for that candidate. And you know what? They're just going to click the Democratic box all the way down the ticket. You should do that. You will feel better than, like, sitting behind a keyboard screaming at me about how much you hate Merrick Garland. Like, you will actually be a part of the solution then, instead of a part of the problem of seeding disinformation that makes people not want to get out and vote. Like, it makes me really mad. Sorry. I mean, I guess that's very clear, but it makes me very, very mad. Very mad. Like, there are people out there who are engaged in seeding outrage for clicks, and they are fostering disinformation by doing it instead of actually giving people solutions to where we find ourselves. Like, it's really very, 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 very important. Bye. Okay, so let's talk for a couple of seconds about a few other things that are ongoing right now. And I want to make a couple of things really clear to people here. We are now 2 weeks away from the first criminal prosecution of Donald Trump going to trial. 2 weeks from today, they start seating a jury in New York City. Everybody better buckle up, because it's going to be a very interesting ride between now and then. One of the reasons why I wanted to just mention this today is this, because we are at this moment sitting in a very interesting window in history where we are watching a malignant narcissist with sociopathic tendencies who suffers from dementia in public decline. And that, by the way, is also very uncomfortable because, like, for instance, yesterday he was in a hypomanic episode where he posted more than 70 posts on Truth Social that were like, woo, right? Very, very, very uncomfortable. And it's going to get worse. Like, I just don't want to mislead anybody on this. Donald Trump, over the next 2 weeks, is going to be decompensating in public, and it is going to be deeply uncomfortable to watch. And I know there are a lot of people who were like, I don't care. It's, you know, like, he's getting what he deserves. He deserves to, like, you know, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't disagree with you on all of that, but I'm just going to tell you, it's going to get worse. Is requiring voter suppression, yes or no? Okay, you're going to buy. We have a lot of trolls on here today, and I'm assuming that they are coming over from Threads. Bye. You're gone. See you later. Have a nice Monday. Banned. Okay. I want people to just understand that the next couple of weeks, while the walls are really closing in on him, it's going to get even worse than it has been before. And we're going to have to sit with it, because there are going to be things that he's going to say that are not going to be arguably illegal and that are not going to be violation of gag orders or bail release conditions, but that are going to be like really, really crazy. And that is because narcissists, when they are confronted with accountability for the final time, decompensate very rapidly, because all of their mythologies fall apart, because all of the things that they have built up around the pit of themselves that knows that they are nothing start to shatter, and they're left with the totality of their unworthiness. And it gets really ugly, really ugly. So I just want people to just really totally understand that the place that we are in right now is one where you're going to have to be uncomfortable. We're all going to have to be uncomfortable, because it's going to be really uncomfortable. And that is because of who he is and exactly what is going to happen between now and the beginning of this criminal trial. It's going to be gross. Okay. Just gross. And like, just understand that you may have to take a break. You may have to decide that it's a day to do some text banking for your favorite local congressional candidate, so that you're not looking at the news and you're not reading what he's posting and you're not being exposed to him. All right. That is just truly critical to managing this moment, is managing your own emotional reactions to make sure that you are able to cope with what is happening in real time. Okay. Related to this, I want to mention one other thing, which is that, going all the way back to the earliest broadcast that we had here, we talked about this concept of extinction bursts. And for those who don't know, extinction bursts are it's like a terminology that's used in dog training and child raising that is about what happens when consequences are dropped and a person is going to be forced into a position, or a dog is going to be forced into a position of giving up behavior that has served them in one way or another. All right. And what it means essentially is that the bad behavior gets worse the closer that you approach real accountability. So all the things that Donald Trump has done to drive narcissistic supply to himself are going to be like on steroids. And that is what you are seeing in terms of what happened yesterday on Truth Social. Full stop. It's a set of extinction bursts, and it is very classic narcissistic decompensation. Okay. Couple of other things. I was asked, what can we do to get Clarence Thomas to recuse? The short answer to that, I hate to tell you, this is nothing. Okay. Clarence Thomas is the only person who will get to decide whether or not he recuses himself from a case. I am going to remind everybody, though, that the sanction for a Supreme Court justice who is engaged in corruption, including high crimes, bribery, treason, high crimes, and misdemeanors, is impeachment. And where does impeachment start? It starts in the House of Representatives. So unless and until we take back the House of Representatives in 2024, there's no possibility of impeaching Clarence Thomas, or for that matter, expanding the Supreme Court, which is a real solution to this. All right. Like, that has to come through legislation. So I want everybody to just understand that the circumstances that we are in right now with regard to Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito are ugly, and their corruption deserves to be investigated. And Sheldon Whitehouse is absolutely leading the charge, talking about the need for an enforceable code of ethics against the Supreme Court, which has never existed. Okay. But if you want Clarence Thomas off the bench, you've got to mobilize to take back the House in 2024. Full stop. That's it. That's how it's going to happen. It's the only way it can happen. All right. That's that. Okay. Somebody asked a question about if Trump posting a photograph of the back of that truck of Joe Biden bound and gagged and shot is a threat against the president of the United States. What about the guy who's driving the truck? So I will just tell you, the guy who's driving the truck should get a visit from the Secret Service. Full stop. Oh, here we go again. Gosh, this person is just relentless today. I'm sorry that your only entertainment here is posting strange all caps things on our feed. I wish you well. I will just tell you that one of the things that I think people need to kind of understand here is that kind of, as I discussed earlier, that kind of conduct by your average everyday citizen warrants a visit from the Secret Service, and exactly the same kinds of things that we talked about in terms of what happens when you post something on social media that could arguably be considered to be a threat against the president would happen to the owner of that truck. That's the story. Okay. That's how it works. All right. Somebody asked a really good question this morning on the feed. And I had to laugh at this one because it's a solid question. Somebody said to me, what are you going to do when you get overwhelmed? Because I get overwhelmed all the time and I don't know how to handle it. Like, how are you keeping track of all this? Okay. So, I've been here for 7 years. I think everybody knows this. Like, this broadcast originally started out with a bunch of posts on Facebook. And then the first live broadcast was January 27th of 2017. And we were live on Facebook for a number of years. And then we went over to Patreon, and there was a window of time in 2019, after I had been cyber harassed and doxxed and all these other horrible things had happened, where I checked out of a public broadcast for several years. And it was available on the Patreon feed, but only there and only behind a paywall. And the reason for that was because, I will just be really honest about this, I was profoundly traumatized by what had happened in the context of like people posting photographs of my house on social media, talking about where I lived and where my kids went to school. It got completely out of hand to the point that police reports had to be filed. Okay. That was my moment of overwhelm. And I managed it, and I hired a really good trauma therapist, and I did all sorts of other things to kind of move in the direction of being able to do this work and hold this container in a way that was still of service, that worked for everyone else. Now, I will just say a couple of things about this. We brought this broadcast back live on YouTube 5 days a week last August. I have, as just a means of survival, incredibly good self-care practices. Okay. And that is because holding the container for all of this is hard work. And also it comes with a lot of threat. And I'm not really happy about that, right? That isn't very easy in this moment in time. But at the same time, if I am here, right, doing this work to educate all of you, and I'm doing it for the vast majority of you who are like incredibly decent people who really care about American democracy and working to get out the vote and doing the right thing, if I am able to be here and to do that well, I want to be here and do it. It's a calling, right? It didn't happen on purpose. I didn't set out to do this. It was entirely accidental, right? The broadcast went viral because somebody dropped it into the Pantsuit Nation group on Facebook in 2017. Like, I was just talking to my friends before that. I wasn't talking to all of you. All right. So one of the things that I'm doing in my everyday is that, like, I take breaks. I take Saturdays off entirely. I do my very best to not look at the news on Saturday if I can help it. And I highly recommend that you all do the same. And I highly recommend that if you are having a day where your body is in constant fight or flight because of strange things that Donald Trump has posted on social media, take a break, back up, be like, okay, am I currently under threat? Is my safety currently under threat? Am I currently is my life at risk? The answer to that might be yes. If so, I urge you to seek support and do what you need to do. But if the answer to that is I am having a fight or flight response because of what I am seeing on social media, you should back away from the screen and take a day off or 2 or however long you need, so that the message that you are giving to your central nervous system is, I am okay. I am safe in my home. I am safe in my bed. I am safe in my body. These are some of my mantras. Okay. And I'm also just going to say one other thing about all of this. All right. The work that I have done over the course of my life, whether it's being an activist since I was 15 years old, that's when I organized my first protest, doing incredibly abhorrent work on behalf of victims of human rights violations. Like, I can't even tell you the things that I had to see and witness, and the depositions I had to take, and the testimonies that I had to read when I was handling that case against Japan for the sexual enslavement of hundreds of thousands of women and girls during World War II. I have seen things and read things and heard things that no human being should ever have to see, hear, or read. Okay. And I have, I think, a larger capacity for that stuff as a result than most folks. And that is because of my exposure, because of my training, because of my experience, and also because of the fact that, for whatever reason, I was born with a brain that processes a lot of information very fast, and I'm very good at compartmentalization. So I am not, at this moment, concerned about becoming overwhelmed. And I really appreciate the people who have asked that question, the folks who are concerned not only about their own well-being, but also about mine. But I'm going to tell you something. There's never been a more important moment in American history for people to be telling the truth about things like disinformation, telling the truth about things like how the legal system works, so that average, everyday Americans understand what is going on. Because otherwise you're vulnerable, right? You will fall prey to disinformation. You will regurgitate things that you are being told by people who are seeking outrage and clickbait to make money, right? You will be a part of the problem if you don't understand this stuff. And so my role in all of this, I think, and one reason why, as I said yesterday on the Patreon only broadcast for Coffee Hour, one reason why I have finally come to accept that this broadcast is why I'm here, right? Like doing this work is one of the reasons why I was put on this earth. One of the reasons why I finally said yes to that is because there is a dire need for this right now, maybe more than there ever was at any other moment in, maybe at any other moment than there was prior to now. And so I will be here and I will be doing this work. And I ask you all to kind of like trust me that if there is a moment where I need a break, I will take that. But I'm also really going to encourage all of you to be very attuned to your own bodies, because your body will tell you when it's too much. If you are having like fight or flight responses, right? You read something on social media, your face gets hot, you feel your heart pounding, you have like anxiety, even though you're in your own home and you're not under immediate threat, hopefully in your own home, that is a sign that you should take a break. And you should go for a walk. You should get some sunshine. You should do some exercise. You should pet your dog. You should talk to your kids. You should commune with nature. Whatever it's going to take to send the message to your central nervous system that you're okay. Because the other thing that I'm just going to tell you is that if we're all in fight or flight response 24/7, you know what we're not doing? Working to get out the vote, right? Our nervous systems are being hijacked right now by outraged farmers for profit. That's like full stop. That's what's happening. And unfortunately, it's happening on our side of the fence as much as, well, maybe not as much, but it is happening on our side of the fence. And when you see people posting things that are like, Merrick Garland sucks, repost this if you agree, your response to that should be to block that person, no matter how prominent they are, no matter how big their account is, no matter how much they claim they're working on behalf of democracy, because that is outrage farming. And it is designed to make you upset for clicks. It does not help democracy. It doesn't push you to get out the vote. It doesn't tell you how to solve a problem. It doesn't encourage you to get involved. It is literally just someone farming for clicks on the back of your body. Okay, so that is my little rant for today. 42 minutes of it, full stop. Okay. If you like this broadcast and if it matters to you, and if it has helped you today, if it has talked you off a ledge, if it has given you information that you can use, please hit the like on this broadcast. Please hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. Drop me a comment if you're watching after the fact. And I will also just say one other thing here. Okay. We rely on the subscribers of our Patreon folks at patreon.com/resistancelive to pay my staff behind the scenes, to support this work, which takes 5 hours of my working day from the moment I wake up at like usually around 4:45 in the morning until we're live on the air, and then everything I have to do after the fact to make sure it gets to the people it needs to get to. Please support this work financially if it's meaningful to you. It's only, the subscription started $2 a month. It's less than 10 cents a broadcast. You can swing it. And, consider it to be like what you would do for NPR or PBS. It's an education. It's work. Okay. I will mention one final thing here, which is that there is an upcoming program that we are offering on all this stuff called Truth or Fiction, a media literacy, disinformation, inoculation, and democracy protection program. Class starts 2 weeks from today. You can register at GaiaLeadershipProject.com/truth-or-fiction. It's 4 weeks. In-depth training on everything from media literacy to how to spot disinformation, to how to deal with trolls in real time, to how to make sure you're not spreading information that is false, and how to do it in collective so that we are not a part of the problem of undermining democracy. As you can tell, I care about this stuff very much. And it was time to put all of it into a program that all of you can use, because this is all the stuff I do every day. And there's also a lot of research about how this is working right now on the American public, especially on the left. So please get involved in that if it's of interest to you. All right, my friends, thanks for being here. It's a Monday. If there's breaking news later on today, we'll be back for an emergency broadcast like I always am. I really do expect we're going to hear from Juan Merchan at some point today. And I will catch you all here, if not tomorrow at regular time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your support. Much love, and try to find some peaceful moments today. All right, my friends, I'll see you soon.